From a magic greatsword made from the tail of a dragon, to a lightning spear wielded by one of the most powerful beings in all of Dark Souls 3 has no shortage of weapons to choose from, so choosing the right weapon for the job can be quite the challenge. In this video, I'll be showing you the top 10 weapons that'll make any playthrough an absolute cakewalk. And remember, this is just my opinion, and if your favorite weapon didn't make it on this list, it's not because it isn't good, it's because these are personally my favorite weapons and what I think are the best in the game. And if I missed your favorite weapon, comment down below what it is, and if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll make a list of the most popular ones I see and make a video ranking them based on your comments. But that's enough yapping from me, let's get into the video. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the Astora Greatsword. This weapon is extremely versatile and works with just about any build you can think of. You can infuse the weapon to have A or S scalings with faith, intelligence, dexterity, and strength. Its moveset has a lot of horizontal sweeping attacks, making it good for crowd control, and it does a lot of stagger damage, allowing you to stagger even the biggest of enemies. Its R2 attack also does an absolutely insane amount of damage if you hit the entire thing. It can be found relatively early in the game, just outside of the cleansing chapel, and can really carry you through a lot of the early game. Next up at number 9 though, has to be one of the coolest weapons in Souls-like history. The Friede Scythe is one of the only 4 scythes in Dark Souls 3 and can be found after beating Sister Friede herself at the end of the first DLC. It has really high damage potential, with the weapon art allowing you to dance around with 2 scythes just like Sister Friede, which is great for crowd control, or you can send out icicles in an area in front of you, applying frostbite to any enemies willing to stand inside of the attack. One of the only downsides of this weapon, however, is that it can't be infused or buffed, but its normal damage is incredibly high, so you won't have to worry about it anyways. Now I know what you're thinking, how the hell is there anything cooler than dual wielding 2 frost scythes? Well, in case you forgot, the Ring Knight paired greatswords are absolutely insane and they landed number 8 on this list. You do have to make a substantial equip load sacrifice in order to power stance these 2 ultra greatswords, but the damage trade-off is well worth it. These swords give you the most hyper armor out of any weapon in the game while you're swinging them, and the weapon art shoots out a blade of fire which can be followed up by a heavy or light attack for just 15 FP. Unfortunately, you don't get these swords until super late into the second DLC outside the Church of Filianor, but its only drawbacks is that it doesn't scale well, and you can't two-hand them to reduce the 40 strength requirement to use them effectively, making them great for any New Game Plus run. Speaking of high stat requirements, at number 7 I have the Frayed Blade. This katana has the highest dexterity requirement in the game, forcing you to put 40 points into the stat just to wield it effectively, and the durability is super low compared to other weapons in the game. But since repair powder is cheap and plentiful in the world, even if your sword breaks, you can easily have it back in action, but its damage potential is absolutely insane and is only obtainable after beating Midir. This weapon does a mix of physical and dark damage, which is actually the best damage type because it isn't resisted by many enemies in the game except for the boss you get it from, and its weapon art has 2 uses, allowing you to unleash a flurry of slashes in front of you, pretty much guaranteeing you bleed your enemy, or you can shoot a dark projectile on the ground, allowing you to have some range. Coming in at number 6 is the Hollowslayer Greatsword. This weapon was wielded by Lucatil of Mira in Dark Souls 2 and can be made after beating the Curse Rotted Greatwood fairly early in the game. He's also a gimmick boss, making him super easy to beat. This greatsword is super unique since it mostly scales off of dexterity, which is rare for greatswords. It gives dex users a strong poise weapon so they can stand closer and fight enemies instead of dodging around and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. It's also unique in the fact that it's the only greatsword with a 3-hit combo when light attacking. The light attack also gives you hyper armor on the second and third attack in the string, and as an added bonus, the sword does 20% extra damage to any enemies that are hollow, and this affects bosses like Slave Knight Gale even in his second and third phase, and yet it is still not the best greatsword in the game. The Splitleaf Greatsword is going to kick off our top 5. While this weapon is technically not a greatsword and is actually a part of the halberd weapon class, it has one of the best 1- and 2-hand movesets in the game, and it can be found immediately in the second DLC of Dark Souls 3. You have to speak to the stone-humped hag in Dreg Heap and buy it from her for 11,000 souls. The Splitleaf Greatsword has a good mix of close and long range attacks, and with the high damage output and an S scaling on strength if you infuse it with a heavy gem, it can easily be considered the most versatile strength weapon in the game. It still scales well with intelligence or faith if you infuse it with lightning, simple, or blessed. It also has a weapon art that costs 0 FP and allows you to spin the weapon in front of you and combo into every heavy or light attack. It's mostly used in PvP, but is still super deadly in PvE, which now brings us to the actual best greatsword Greatsword in the game. The Exile Greatsword is an easy choice for the 4th spot on this list. The upsides of this weapon easily make up for it having the shortest range and weighing the most of any other Greatsword in the game. Not only is it the fastest attacking and highest damage curve Greatsword, but almost every infusion for the weapon has either an A or S scaling. The only stat the Exile Greatsword doesn't scale well with is dexterity. It's also great in PvP since the weapon art can't be parried and can combo out of a light attack, and most of the attacks are horizontal slashes, which makes it really good for crowd control as well. Since it can be found early in the game just before you enter Fair and Keep, it's no wonder this weapon made it into the top 5. The Dragonslayer Greataxe has some of the highest damage in the game and comes in at number 3. When you max it out and two-hand the Dragonslayer Greataxe at 66 strength, it has an attack rating of 729, which is easily one of the highest in the game, and it can only be acquired after beating Dragonslayer armor, which can be done early if you were skilled enough to beat Dancer of the Boreal Valley at a low level. The Dragonslayer Greataxe is the heaviest Greataxe in the game, and its attack can be slow sometimes, but the amount of damage you're putting out more than makes up for it, especially on the weapon art, which gives you hyper armor and makes you slam your axe in the ground, causing lightning to strike and doing huge amounts of damage to anything in its path. It has a slow windup, so it's not always safe to get off, but when it does, you can very easily one-shot a lot of enemies with it. Straight swords are widely considered the best weapon class in Dark Souls 3, and coming in at number 2 is the best straight sword combo in the game. The Lothric Knight's Sword is not only the longest straight sword in the game, but it also has the highest critical modifier at 110. It can be found very early in the game at High Wall of Lothric, which is the first area you explore outside of the tutorial. It's dropped by the Lothric Knights in the area and can be easily farmed once you make it to the tower on the wall bonfire, since you can run down the stairs and kill the knight quickly until he drops a sword to you. It's only a 4% drop chance from the knight, but with enough time or enough luck, you can have a weapon to carry you through the entire game. The weapon art also has some hyper armor on it, and it has 2 moves allowing you to do an upward slash or upward stab. It even has a great PvP combo that's good for catching people rolling away. After hitting 2 R1s on an opponent, you can start charging an R2 and try to time their roll with the attack. My personal favorite setup is a Faith Focus build with the Blessed Infusion and the Blessed Weapon buff. The weapon still has a lot of damage, and your survivability goes through the roof. The weapon is fast attacking and consumes very little stamina, making it super beginner friendly while still dealing out loads of damage. But by far the highest DPS weapon in the game, and rounding out our list at number 1 is the Sellsword Twinblades. There's a reason speedrunners use this weapon in almost every category of the game. You can start the game with these 2 power stance swords if you choose the mercenary class, or they can be found very early in the game at the Road of Sacrifices just behind a Black Knight after beating just 1 boss. These swords attack insanely fast and scale well with dexterity even without a sharp infusion. It's good in both PvP and PvE, with its only drawback being its short range. The Sellsword Twinblades also scale well with intelligence and faith if you infuse them with the right gems. It has a guaranteed one-shot combo in PvP if players don't know how to look out for it, and I mean it when I say this, it can melt any and every boss in the game. And since it weighs so little, you can wear any armor set to max out Fashion Souls. Those were my top 10 weapons in Dark Souls 3. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy this video where I do another top 10 but for the weapons in Elden Ring, and this list might be a little spicier than this one. Have a great day, bye bye.